SDS of soybeans. So SDS stands for sudden death syndrome, although if we were being honest with ourselves, we would rename it slow, long-term agonizing death of soybeans. Because even though it looks like all of a sudden it's dying out of nowhere, it's actually been dying for a while. And that's because SDS is in fact a stem and a root rot. And this infection has happened as that soybean is germinating and emerging. As that infection, that fungus continues to grow and infect the root and the stem, that fungus is also producing toxins. And when we get a rain in early or mid-August, after those toxins have been building up, they translocate to the foliage and start killing off the leaves. So then we actually see the infection that's been festering all year long. Now, soybean diseases in general can be pretty hard to diagnose and tell apart. Typically, we are looking at foliar symptomology, but what's tricky is that this foliar symptomology is also a good indicator of brown stem rot and red crown rot of soybeans. To determine the difference between SDS and brown stem rot, you're going to need to split the stem. So if it's brown stem rot, the pith in here is going to be, well, brown. If it's white, you need to look down and split this lower stem and roots. If you're dealing with sudden death syndrome, you're going to see this browning of the cortex. Now, if you're dealing with red crown rot, it's going to have more of a red discoloration as well as little red dots called apothecia. Now, there are a couple different ways that can help you when it comes to SDS management. Probably one of the best ones is choosing a variety with a good SDS tolerance score. Now, that being said, if I have a bean with a good SDS tolerance score, do I still need to treat it with a seed treatment, Olivo or Saltro? Absolutely, you should. And here's why. So like we discussed before, SDS is actually a stem and a root rot. Now, when we go and we are rating these soybeans to SDS, we are taking those off of a visual foliar expression. So you could still have yield loss from an SDS infection and not really see it from a foliar perspective. So that's why on average, we still see a nice yield bump by adding these seed treatments, because even if you don't see SDS in some of these soybeans, you might still have yield loss below the ground. The other one, of course, is planting date management and making sure that you aren't planting into cool, wet soil types. Now, we can still get this stuff if it's a little bit drier and not quite as cold. We can still get it, but you're gonna see the worst yield loss if it is the best environment for it, which is when it takes that bean a long time to get out of the ground, because that means that you have a very long infection window.